everyone, I'm Denisha Devnarayan, and you're watching the Full Quota podcast on One World Sports Radio.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Full Quota podcast. I think we're on like episode 35 now. So Tim, we're going strong. So
it's a decent start.
So welcome to everybody. If you're new to our podcast or our channel, it's a Full Quota podcast on One World Sports Radio. We cover all things South African cricket, and this podcast is essentially a weekly bite to give you something, a bit of a discussion, and a little bit of a taste of what's happened in the week in South African cricket, and we try to do that quite a lot right now. Obviously, the Proteas are out of the World Cup. We'll talk about that. We're also going to talk about the 4-day series as well. So please make sure that you do like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're trying to get to 1,000 followers. So if you can, just press that button, because we've also got rugby commentary. We're following not the Proteas, the Springboks, in the end of year tour, and so we are covering that. And so the game against Scotland this weekend will be broadcast on 1WSR, and we've got like YouTube and everything else. So that's cool. And we have an Anchor podcast also on Apple Podcasts as well. So if you just want an audio, just go to anchor.fm/ I think it's One World Sports Radio, and you'll find it. So that's where you can find us. So this week, Tim, we're talking Proteas exit, we're talking CSA 4-day series. But before we even start that, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Yeah, can't complain.
You can't complain. Okay, cool. I think we're going to go into something where you will be complaining. Let's talk the Proteas exit at the World Cup. They exited the World Cup on Saturday. They won a game against England, which many people think would probably end up being the proverbial world champions. But they won. They lost one game at the World Cup, but they are going home because Australia had a better net run rate, and England, because it's not just Australia, it's Australia and England had a better net run rate than South Africa. Tim, what are your thoughts around that, and where does this team? Because everyone's asking about expectations. I'm going to ask you: where are they in terms of expectations?
So, in terms of results, they performed a little bit better than I expected, because, as you said, they beat maybe champions. I still think in a T20 format, any one of those four could actually get over the line, but England are exceptionally strong. So I didn't really see us beating England, particularly in Sharjah. But as a whole, over the tournament, I think tactically we've got it wrong. We are still playing T20 cricket that is being played a bit back in the past. The tactics of building an innings and then going big at the end is not how the best teams win World Cups. I said this in earlier shows, that if we didn't be a bit more proactive, if we weren't a bit more positive, if we didn't take risks at certain times, we were not going to win a World Cup. We would win games like England, like the Sri Lankan game, where in another day we wouldn't have won if it wasn't. But in general, we performed above par. But I do think tactically we have a problem. There's going to be a lot written in the coming weeks. Cricket South Africa took a positive tone in their message after the World Cup, which I think is a good thing. But I'm also a little bit surprised. But I do think it's a good thing. We're moving forward. But I do think changes need to be made. Whether those changes are personnel, I think there are 3 or 4 guys that should definitely not be there when we go to the Australian T20 World Cup.
Name and shame those 3 and 4 guys now. Okay, not name and shame, but who are those 3 or 4 guys?
No, okay. So Risa Hendricks performed above par. He did improve, but he's not going to win us a World Cup. So Risa Hendricks should not be in Australia. Heinrich Klaasen should not be going to Australia. Who else? We will not be going in with 3 spinners. So you can say that.
That's fine. I want to win a 4-day series with Bjorn, so you guys can.
So
you can
Bjorn Fortuyn,
bring him back to us.
Bjorn Fortuyn definitely will not be going. Not that he performed, but just it's in Australia. We're not going to go with. We're going to go with
in Australia. By the way, is my starting 11.
We're going to go. I think we should go with Shabzi. At maybe one more. Who else? Who else at the batting? Obviously, we need Quinton to perform. Quinton had a very poor, by his standards, World Cup, so that was a huge concern. In the batting, the only guys that performed admirably were Aidan Markram, who had a superb tournament, and Rassie van der Dussen. But Rassie, it needs other guys to come through. For him to be there, we need other guys to come through. So if you looked at somebody like David Miller hit 2 sixes in 3 matches. David Miller. Now, there are lots of reasons for that. Mostly because he was batting too far down. He came in too late, which is why I refer to the tactics. I think tactically, in personnel, batting positions, batting approach, we got it horribly wrong. We need to think about individuals like the Vern Lubbers, the Wesley Marshalls. We need to think about Jacques Snyman. He's not in form, but he's a big hitter in this format. Then you need to think. Riley Vassar. Is he an option? Because in terms of personnel, in terms of playability, he definitely should be. So there are definitely 5 or 6 guys that definitely right now, if you pick your T20 11 now, should be going into a squad of 15 over the individuals that are there at the moment.
So one of the things that we saw on Twitter was people bemoaning the fact that Aiden was batting too low, and the person who seemingly was the casualty for that was Temba Bavuma. Where do you sit with Temba Bavuma's performance? And also, what do you do with them going forward?
It's a tough one because I think he's an exceptional captain, and I thought he led exceptionally well, both on and off the field, in trying circumstances, not just the Quinton de Kock situation, just in general. He would have felt the pressure right from the get-go. There wasn't much hope for us in going to this World Cup, so there wasn't much positively going into it in a general sense. But I think he needs to bat in that either first or second. He needs to either open or bat 3. I think he's fine, but he needs to have less dot balls. If he gets going, he's fine. I'm absolutely fine with him. But he does need to chew up less deliveries. And he'll know that. He will know that he can't do that. Going forward, he's got to be able to find the gaps better. He's not going to be clearing the MCG next year and hitting it out of the ground. He's not that guy. Your David Millers, your Dwayne Proteas, Millers, and those guys are that guy. I think he's good enough. He's good enough at the side, but it's about finding roles. But it's not just about him. So, but Miller wasn't used properly. Proteas wasn't used properly. I think pretty much everybody. I think the only guy that was used 100% properly was Aidan Markram. Aidan Markram
and Quinton de Kock.
And Quinton de Kock, obviously, pretty opening, but it just didn't click for him. Those two were the only guys where you thought, yes, that's where they should be and we know Aidan Markham came off brilliantly. But there's, for me, as I say, it's a tactical approach. Just to go back in a bigger picture, I've said this before, I don't think sacking Mark Boucher is the solution. But if sacking the entire coaching setup and starting afresh, I would actually be okay with that. But
why do you want to fire everybody else? What did they do?
As long as all of them, the whole lot, start afresh. That would include Mark Boucher. I'm not going to leave. No, that would include. If you're going to do that, don't just sack the guy at the head. Get rid of the entire lot and start afresh. And what I mean is, I'm talking about batting coach, the bowling coach, the fielding coach, the spin bowling coach. They are doing okay. Okay. It's not going to win a World Cup. Okay, it's not going to win a Test Championship. Okay, it's not going to win tournaments. I know why South Africa went the way that they did with certain personnel, financial. I get that. But that is hampering us. I would rather somebody was earning a little bit less than their position, no names, and that money went into a better coaching setup, a better coaching personnel. They are better coaches in domestic cricket at the moment than the ones we have at Proteas. Sorry, but they are.
Wait, do you have a problem with Justin Salmons?
I have a problem with Justin Salmons within the Proteas setup, yes.
Because of the way they were batting.
Because of the way they were batting.
But
I know he was there for 5 minutes. I get that. But I saw nothing that said this is a different approach.
Tim, here's a point. Isn't it the coach's job to come up with a strategy? We know that from Enoch resigning, him saying that he's just a Cones boy, and Mark has the strategy. So essentially, surely Mark's the one who should be, if you have a problem with the team strategy, the guy to fall on a sword. Everybody else, with a new coach, they'll be moving around and everything else. But doesn't your worry about the team's tactics and strategy and the way they bat and fall solely at the feet of the coach? Because what the other guys do, they follow. Wouldn't they follow the instructions from Mark?
It falls more on Mark than anybody else. I will say that. So it's more than him. Yes, he takes.
And
more
also, Shoal didn't do a bad job. The bowlers were very good.
The bowling coach is the only one that can stay. Okay, the only one. The only one that can stay is Shoal Langeveld.
I don't know.
I'm excluding just so everyone knows. I'm excluding the team manager and that I'm talking about the stuff that happens on the field. The playing guys.
Okay. So, I don't know if you listened to the press conference, but Mark wants JP Dwemini. Mark says if he can have JP Dwemini as a batting consultant, as a consultant, he'll have him. And I was sitting there going, but JP's got a job though. He's working. He's the batting coach for the Lions. So, so that's another story for another day. But that's what Mark wanted. My issue with this World Cup is I don't get why everyone was so down on this team. Yes, I was critical of them, but if we actually looked at the format of the World Cup and looked at the teams that were in our group and looked at the requirements for us to leave the group, the minimum requirement with a strong West Indies or a West Indies that does well and wins games would have been 3 wins, and we would have been through to the next round with a better net run rate. Yes, we would have had that conversation, but we're always going to have that conversation either at a 3-win 6 points or a 4-win 8 points. But if you looked at and when we sat here when we did our World Cup preview and we spoke about how the Proteas could navigate, it wasn't Mount Everest. This team is not a team full of scrubs. You may not like the way they play, but they were winning games. They came into the World Cup winning 9 of the last 11 T20s they played. They were moving up the world rankings, funny enough, whereas everyone else was dropping, Australia and everybody else. And to a certain extent, when I look at this World Cup, I am very disappointed. I think they actually met expectations. And the only reason why they met expectations is that we didn't give them a chance against England and Sharjah. That's the only reason why. If we lost to England and Sharjah, they would have been below expectations, and I would have been asking for somebody to be fired. And you know who I'd be asking for. So my issue is that this is a team that showed us who they were. They were so stubborn in the way they played their cricket, T20 cricket, throughout the last 6 months, that I expected them to do the exact same thing. And beat Australia by setting them 150. Well, that didn't happen. And that kind of killed the tournament for them. But my issue with this team is naivety. That's the number one thing. Like understanding where your pressure points are. If they were building up to play and beat England, that's not how you build the tournament. Because beating the number one side in the world does nothing if you don't progress, because it meant that you had to beat the teams in and around your level. And in this World Cup, Australia and the West Indies were at their level. They were there for the taking. Yes, we did beat the West Indies, even after all this drama with Quinny and everything else. And that showed this team's character, and it showed where the brand of cricket this team was playing. And it was good enough to get through. It was good enough to get through, but they did not. And so for me, I am disappointed. I am happy that they gave us 4 wins in a row, 100%. But I'm disappointed because we were naive. And for me, that Australia game showed a lack of planning. Mark Boucher, after on Saturday, spoke about how they didn't know what target to set. That shouldn't be coming out of my coach's mouth. That shouldn't be coming out of my coach's mouth. Because the problem with that is that you're telling me that you did not do the homework that we asked you to do to prepare for the World Cup. The first game of the World Cup with an opponent you knew 2 months before who you'd be playing and also where you'd be playing. So, and you also had a week playing in Abu Dhabi, watching the warm-ups, playing in watching the qualifiers that when they moved to the UAE, they played some games there. So I don't understand how when you arrived at Australia, your team was undercooked and it took a loss for the team to be galvanized and go on this run. That tells me there's something wrong with this team. And it's like it's either they underestimated Australia and they couldn't get themselves up for the game, or they severely miscalculated. And for that, I want somebody fired. And we know who that is. Because I can't go into a tournament and have tournament play with the person who's supposed to be the manager and leading my team still thinking very archaically about ICC tournaments and how to play tournaments and how to navigate tournaments. Our naivety cost us an opportunity to cause an upset, and because it's Tuesday today, tomorrow on Wednesday. And to a certain extent, that's where I was. I honestly do think this team had the best bowling attack in the world, and it kept us in games. In all 5 games, it kept us in those games, except for that Australia one, but they did try. And so I don't understand how everyone's like, and I get the positive tone from CSA, but I do hope in their review of the thing, they discuss these moments. The Australia game was glaring to me that they were undercooked and underprepared. And so from that point of view, I'm disappointed. They met my expectations because I wanted them to win 4 games. They did. I actually thought they would win 4 games. They did. They just won the wrong set of 4. And in understanding how tournaments work and understanding how you play, because I do this with all teams. I do this with Bafana. I did this with the Springboks in 2019. And even Rassie did it with the Springboks. Rassie came and told the nation, oh, guys, don't worry about New Zealand. That's okay. We'll lose to them, but we're going to beat them in the final because I'm going to make sure in my plan for the World Cup, we're going to win the rest of our games. He knew that. And you know why? Because he knew that he was going to play the team that was going to top the group. You are allowed a loss at a World Cup if you're like an underdog against the team that was going to top the group, because that's an easy one. Everyone expects you to lose that one. The rest of the games, you're not allowed to lose. And so the fact that they managed to just give, because this team never had a bad batting performance in 6 months. They remember there was times where even George Linder came in, but South Africa somehow managed to score 140. So that was my issue. I was like, guys, where's this coming from? And to me, that is one reason I'd say I'm fine with this guy, because from a planning perspective, he's shown to me that he can't get the team ready. He can't get the team ready. And it's only when they realize that they're going to be out of the World Cup do they then want to play. I want you to play when you know that you are in the World Cup and you want to win the World Cup. And I want you to play because, oh no, if I lose another game, I'm out. And that's essentially what it was from game 2 all the way. This team was fighting for their lives. And they were running out of time. And the clock ran out because the West Indies decided to show us that they didn't do. But essentially, when you lose a game at the World Cup against your peer, you're giving someone else the opportunity to then control your World Cup journey for you. And that's essentially what happened. And that's the reason why I'm disappointed, because I honestly thought, and I honestly believed in my heart of hearts, we could have been that Australia side. Not because they messed up against Bangladesh, just because if you look at that side, it was that Australian side's not that great. And Australia, yes, and Australia are living the lives that we are wanting to live. Imagine them playing Pakistan tomorrow. Oh, what an opportunity for a team that has no right to be in the semi-final, coming up against the Pakistan side that's won 5 in a row and are due to lose 1, because that's the nature of T20, right? And you're sitting there going, Pakistan haven't had a bad performance in the tournament. Australia are improving. How are they there? And that's why I'm so sore, because this could have been us. This could have been us. And Australia are showing us that. So that's where I'm at. So for me, that's where I'm at. And I understand South Africans, because a lot of South Africans are happy. They're like, oh, no, we won 4 games. We won whatever. We didn't expect to win 4 games. And that's great. But if you actually watch this team play T20 cricket, it wasn't good. It wasn't a good watch, but it was a consistent performance. And that's why, like, I remember I was asked on a space after the Australia game, what was the one word to characterize the performance? And I said that was uncharacteristic. Because you gave us, if you are good and you're a chef and your capability is not filet mignon, yours is just to give me a well-done steak. That's where you are. You're not at filet mignon territory. And you give me a well-done steak, and that's still a good enough meal to win all the competitions, all the cooking competitions in the world, or beat your peers. I ask you to give me a well-done steak. I'm not asking you to give me filet mignon. So when you don't give me a well-done steak in mid-competition when the pressure's on, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to judge you? I then go and look and say, then maybe you guys weren't prepared. Or you can't handle the pressure. And then the next day, you then produce 4 filet mignons for the next 5 games. What does that tell me about the first game? It tells me that you weren't able to get the team up for the most important game of the tournament. It was only the threat of being eliminated that got them up. And I'm happy it did, because you should always be able to handle that type of pressure. But when the sun is out and there's no pressure on you, I need you to perform. And the Proteas did not. And that's my biggest indictment about this Proteas team throughout the past 18 months. When everything is okay and there's no pressure on you, they'll give us this. But like when we beat England in that test series, the first game of Mark Boucher, everybody was under pressure. They won. After that, we've won the game. Oh, wow. Everything just fell apart. So my issue is there's something fundamentally wrong, or not fundamentally wrong, something wrong in the tactics and the way we played. Yes, I get you. But my issue was, how did they not prepare properly for the first game of a tournament? It is so important. Like, it's not like we're playing 10 teams, like in England last year, where you can lose to England and hope that you can win every other game. It's 5 teams. It's 5 games. And so I don't understand how the urgency and the importance of each game was not brought through to these guys, because all I needed was, when you're 3 wickets down after 6 overs against Australia, is to take the game all the way to the 20th over and put up for 140, like you've been doing before. But they didn't. And that's why we're out of the World Cup. It's not net run rate. It's not the game against Bangladesh. It was that game against Australia, and I will I people need to be fired for that, because I don't get how you are not knowing what's a good score to set, but that's fine. But you're 3 down in the power play, so it doesn't matter what's good score you're going to get. Put something above at 7 runs and over on the board so that your bowlers can bowl at. That was always the plan. The plan was always have someone to bat until the 15th over and then put someone down, but you ended up at 110 and you're out. And we're watching the team that beat us, that had no right to do so, living their best lives in a semi-final that nobody even in their country cares about. But that's it. Outside of that, there were positives, Tim. What were your positives?
The positives were the bowling. The bowling was exceptional. And also what was good to see, we all know that, was the fielding. I thought the fielding standards were very similar to what they were against the West Indies in the Caribbean series. I thought the fielding standings were good. People like Markram took an absolute worldie. So that was really good. Particularly in the field, that there was an intensity. So it didn't matter whatever we scored or whatever the situation, there was an intensity in the field to close down the opposition, to stop the singles, to take the catch, to stop a 3, make sure a 3 was a 2 and a 2 was a 1. So that was a really good impact on that. So that from that point of view. But as you say, that there were positives, but that was probably the big one for me. It was like the old South Africa returning back to
and you want just an on-tongue fight.
Good fielding side.
And you want just an on-tongue fight when we want the other one gone. But anyway, that's fine. But let me say this. I know Aidan Markham's not going to listen to this, but I will put up my hand and say I was wrong. Aidan Markham has proved me wrong in T20 cricket. I didn't want him in the side. I thought he was getting some sort of a privilege by being around in the bubble when those injuries happened and Rizzo went out. I actually thought they should have brought somebody else in, but the bubbles didn't dictate that. And he took his opportunity with both hands, and he played an incredible 6 months of T20 cricket that got him to being the number 1 run scorer for South Africa. So for that, Aidan, I am sorry. I was wrong. And going forward, can you repeat those performances in the T20 side? And, okay, look, even in the ODI side, I still have my questions, but I need that one big innings. If you're not going to give it to me, you can't have played over 25 innings in T20 in ODIs and not scored a century. So that's where I'm at with you. And so I just really do hope, Source, that you can add on more Source when you play in the ODIs, because 2023, we really do need you at number 4. But on top of that, we kind of need you in the T20s next year, because those pitches are going to be pacey. Those pitches are going to be bouncy. And you managed to score 250s at a 200 strike rate. We want that. But the one other thing that I'm happy for you, and I think you really need to buy Rizzo's daughter the biggest present when this happens. That IPL auction is going to happen in January. Dude, you are probably going to be the number 1 sought after asset in that. That's your payday. You're going to become a multimillionaire. So congratulations on that. Because after this World Cup, you are probably the top overseas batsman that they can look for outside of those English guys who want to come and play and not come to play and whatever it is. But you have proven yourself on the biggest stage. And for that, thank you very much. Congratulations. Outside of that, my other positive, that bowling attack, second to none. And even in Australia, I wouldn't change a thing. I'd still bowl Keshav. I'd still start Keshav and have Shamsi in Australia for those middle overs, and I would play it like that. Mark today said he might want to go 1 less spin. I'm like, no, Mark. Actually, you want to play with 2 spinners. That's where the world is going. You need to move where the world is going. Regardless of whatever pitch is provided to you, those 2 spinners are so crucial. And Keshav has proven it in South Africa that he can bowl on whatever wicket you give him, and he can do it really well. And since you picked him on Test cricket form, continue and let him play with Shamsi at the World Cup next year. Outside of that, please give other guys a chance. I'd like to see Riley Rousseau back in South African colours. I'd like to see Donovan Ferreira be given an opportunity. Not 2 games, like a series. Give them like 2 series. Jacques Snyman needs to be looked into. So too, Yanaman needs an opportunity to fight for a spot again. And we need those middle order options. If Wesley Marshall does not get a call up, I am going to Victor and I'm like, dude, nah, bro. This can't happen. Because a guy like Wesley Marshall gives you an opportunity for you to bat him at 6. He's experienced enough. He can bat at 6. He can hit from ball 1. Those are the type of things you're looking for to try and fix whatever holes you see in that squad and to take away the pressure off of Rassie, off of Aiden, off of everyone else above them, because we've got our 5 bowlers. They work really well. You just need a top 6 that can bat and bat well. And one final thing, sort out your free agent issues. Create a policy, pay them whatever money it is. But what Mark scared me today was he's like, we're not going to judge guys on what they do abroad. We're going to judge them what they do domestically. No, dude. If Aiden scores 1,000 runs in the IPL and he's not a South African, or Faf does that, pick Faf. Like, I don't get this fascination with it's just only can they look at Saru? Can they look at what the Springboks are doing? The Springboks don't care where you play as long as you're good enough. And so for me, that's where my worry is. And so can
I come in there? Just on that. So I've been having an argument with people on that, the idea that let's just say, for example, Simon Harmer gets getting a truckload of wickets for Essex. I know now that means nothing to cricket South Africa. And I know it does.
Well,
they've said it.
Simon Harmer's form isn't great right now. So
but you know what I mean?
I'm with you.
Carl Abbott get loads of wickets for Hampshire. They don't even look at it. I have a huge problem with that. A massive problem. If I'm one of those former Kolpak guys, and if I'm him particularly, if I'm Riley Rousseau, if I'm Simon Harmer, I want assurances from Victor. Listen, I want to come back. I want to play. But if I perform, will I be considered? If it's a no, I'm not coming back. I'm not coming back.
But those are the assurances that were given to them, and that's why they're back. But my issue with all of this, Tim, is that if, let's say, somebody does not perform, Yanaman Malan, for instance, didn't perform well in the domestic CSA T20, right? So currently he has no right to be in that in the SA setup, but he should be. But if we're using domestic form, not because he didn't do quite well. Yeah. But if Yanaman then goes to the Pakistan Super League and he smashes them left, right, and center, surely that should be enough to bring him into the side because he's on 4. So what came out was we're not going to pick guys on what they do abroad. We're going to pick them what they do at home. But let's say if, for instance, and this is the reason why I'm angry about it, Colin Ingram is an incredible a pick for a free agent in a T20 setup because he will perform at the Big Bash League. He's performed every year at the Big Bash League, and he's a guy who should be considered, but he wasn't. Faf wasn't considered. I get everything else, but so for me, I'd want us to move away from that archaic thing of, just because we need you to do it here in South Africa. The one last thing I'm going to say about what Mark said in the press conference, he said that the whole Faf thing is that they wanted guys to be able, they didn't want guys, because they said they asked the team about the guys like AB and Faf, and the team said, yes, bring them in, right? And then the next thing they said was, then the next thing that the team management said, or they said no, but you can't just bring them in for the tournament and they must go, and after the tournament they go away. And I'm sitting there going, what's the problem with that? Is there an issue with that? Because my thing is that if you've paid your dues for South Africa and you're good enough, you can come in and you can go out. I don't have an issue with, I get the whole team cohesion thing and I get it. And maybe you need to kind of figure out that they may need to play one series and they'd be okay with that. But this thing of no, but they must come in, they must sit in the setup. And even after the World Cup, they must still be, no, if they don't want to be available, it's fine. Because the West Indies did that in 2016 and it worked. Yes, it didn't work now, but I'm okay with that. And we need to move away from that type of thinking.
It's actually childish. It's actually childish. We now have a rugby team that has won 2 World Cups, allowing overseas players to play for the Springboks. We've won 2 World Cups by playing in that fashion. It infuriates me. I know that I'm a fan of the former Callbacks, and I get that. I am 100%. But I want the South African cricket team to win a World Cup. And the best way to do that is to have the best guys. You cannot tell me, because this is what Cricket South Africa is telling you. They're saying Mzansi Super League is the best T20 league in the world. That's what they're saying. They're saying it's better than the Big Bash, it's better than the PSL, it's better than the IPL. That's the one that matters. If you do well on that, we will consider you. And that has to change.
The other thing is about opportunities, because it might be a little bit unfair for a guy who does well in the CSA T20, but he doesn't get a look in. But a guy who plays in the IPL or PSL and didn't do well here gets an opportunity based on that. But we're a global league. We've become so more global that shouldn't be an issue. You should then find ways to get your players into those leagues so that they can perform and you can judge them. Also, you can also create a leveling system to say, okay, fine, IPL, because every performance is not the same. Every 50 is not the same. Every 100 is not the same, as you told me, and we're going to talk about that later. But we need to be able to judge performances as they are and people's form. Trevor, so we've got a couple of comments. Ray says, hi, Tim and Mpho. Hi, Ray. Just Coley says, happy 800 subs, guys, with an elbow cough. You guys work really hard, constantly serve the awesome content. Thank you. Trevor Dirksen says, Stain says he'd love to see a batter with a serious aggression in the top 3. Yes, and to a certain extent, maybe bringing in a Yanaman Milan at a 3. So the problem is that balance, and we need to find that balance. And it currently feels like Aiden's that guy with that serious aggression that should be batting at 3, and we should lock in our top 3 now, being Quinton, Timber, and Aiden at 3. And I think that could work, right?
It could work, but you could also do, and I'm just for the fun of it, you could have Quinton, Wesley Marshall, Timber, Aiden. Then you've got 3 guys within that top 4.
Rassie plays at 5, and you have the same David Miller issue at 6.
Yeah, that's true. But then you do
that. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Then you just tell David Miller from ball 1, I need you to hit.
Yeah.
And essentially that would be it. But I'm loving the Wesley Marshall call. We're actually going to talk about him now. Let's segue into the next portion of our conversation. The 4-day series. We had week 2, Tim, and it was fun. So we're going to just go through some of the results that happened. I'll go through them very quickly. The Titans played the Dolphins at Centurion. That ended in a draw. 424 plays 433. And then obviously on the final day, the Titans managed to score 126 for 1. We commented on that game. We had a couple of guys doing the Saturday and the Sunday. I did the Saturday morning. It was really nice to be out there. I was really intrigued by captains wanting to go for the big 400 scores rather than just get to 400, get guys in and try and bowl them out. But that pitch at Centurion is a problem. The Warriors played the Lions in one of the most fascinating games you could ever follow. The Warriors were 58 without loss. Then they lost. They were 58 for 2. Then they lost 8 wickets for like 38 runs. It was just unbelievable carnage there in that first innings. The Lions were just unbelievable. And to a certain extent, they still even bowled them out for 54 underneath that 170. So they won by an innings and 20 runs. The Northwest Dragons played the Knights. The Dragons are really going to struggle this season. You can see it. The Knights with a very strong batting lineup, and they only needed 22 to win on the final day, well, 16 to win on the final day, and they did that really well. They won by 10 wickets. And then the other drawn match was the Rocks against Western Province. That was I'd call it a dull draw, but Tim would call it something else. In Paarl, the pitch was slower, and the batsmen found really hard to score. In Division 2 at the bottom, Easterns played Limpopo. Easterns drew to Limpopo. Limpopo doing very well after being forced to follow on to keep themselves in the game. There was, and that was cool. There was some afternoon thunder showers there, but really, really good to see Limpopo fighting because everybody thought they'd roll over. The Northern Cape Heat against the Tuskers, that was a final day classic. They managing to bowl the Tuskers out. A really, really great effort there from that Heat team. Aubrey Swanepoel, the spinner, the all spinner, he took 6 for 42 in that final innings. And then Southwestern Districts drew to the Rhinos, largely because in Oudtshoorn on day one, it rained out. So, Tim, when you looked at that, what performances stood out for you from a team perspective?
For the team perspective, you can't look beyond that Lions game. You just can't. That Lions bowling attack, that 4-prong pace attack, could play against most Test teams on that pitch and would cause them problems.
Yes, well, the bottom half of that Test ranking, I'm assuming, and probably the Proteas as well. But we'll talk about that another day.
It was exceptional. That 4-prong pace attack is exceptional. One after the other, no rests. It's you need to actually watch it to appreciate it. So when you look at good bowling attacks, you see how they work in partnerships. So, for example, Olafier's job is just bowl fast and short. That is his job.
And
his job is to put fear into the batsman because he is 3 or 4 Ks faster than anyone else in that lineup. So that's what he does. He puts fear in there. He gets a couple of early wickets. And then what comes in with people like Sporter, who's a bit more accurate, but fuller length, he gets up and he chains up the wickets because the batsman feels that he's easier to hit because he is that little bit slower. So it's incredible. It's really it's really incredible.
Well, it is, and I'm loving it. But like Lutus Pamla, as you said, Duan Oliver got his 2 wickets. Lutus Pamla came and took the other 6. Next innings, Duan Oliver doing his job at the top. Sisanda Magala came through, and I don't think the Lions have bowled an over spin this entire 4-day series, which tells you something. Tells you a lot. The other game for me that was intriguing was what was happening in the Western Cape, the Paul Rocks and the Blitz, the Western Province Blitz. That was a really nice game for batters. Peter Malan finally got his first century of the series. That was a really nice one. But one thing I liked was the emergence of another all-round option from Western Province. And I want to ask you to talk about him a little bit. Mihlali Mpongwana, he took 5 for 39 in that first innings, but he also is handy with the bat. He did score 26 in this game, but it's not a true reflection of his batting ability.
He's a real talent. I must admit, I know him a little bit, but not all that well. He was exceptional because even though it was on a whole a disappointing pitch, far too much of a batsman friendly, but he was very, very useful. He's 26 not out with the bat. So, as you say, that all-rounder role, I would probably say a bowling all-rounder, but he was a real find for me for this round. I would actually say he's probably the find of this week, of week 2 for me. It was very, very impressive.
The find of week 2 was Frisco Adams, who continued from his century, and I didn't think he'd score more runs after that century, but he managed to score 50 in that game towards the back end of that. Shout out to Tony DeZorzi, who scored 129, and then Zubir Hamza got his 97. The other game that was quite intriguing, largely because I don't get why Patrick Kruger's batting at 7, but that's like, I don't get it. He scored 192 batting at 7. Pike Van Bouillon scored another century, and he's looking like he's wanting to be in that Proteas middle order. How did you? I know that the Knights are in a lot of pain. Their squad is not good enough, and I'm assuming when they're waiting for Delano Potgieter to get fit. So how did you see that one?
Yeah, the Knights are just too strong at the moment, aren't they? It was a bit of a strange one because the Knights struggled in the batting. If you look, they struggled early on, and then when Patrick and Pipe came together, they started off slowly. You might find that a bit strange when you look at the scorecard.
He's got like 26 boundaries.
And it was only when they got to sort of like a sort of an 80-run partnership, they thought, oh, hang on, this is actually not all that difficult. And the Northwest guys, they just tied.
Yeah,
and they just
and Aldrin Hawken wasn't there as well, so there wasn't that fast bowler who could crank it up a little bit more than you would have expected. And then final game of the week, Tim, the Titans. We saw another emergence of another batting star in the North, Jordan Herman. He scored 112. And then you also had Grant Mokoena and Neil Brunt doing quite well at the top, but outside of that, the Titans batting lineup wasn't. It was better than the previous week, but it still needs a little bit more work. And then the Dolphins just showed their class. The only problem is I'm worried about that bowling attack without Othniel Bartman. It looks a little toothless, And Darren Dupavillon, as great as he is, really him and Cohen Mangru really did struggle to get. They needed the second new ball to try and bowl them out, but they weren't getting the pace and bouncing that they were wanting. And it was a little bit easier for the Titans. And that's the one thing I'm looking at that Dolphins side. I was like, ooh, that doesn't look right. But everything else does.
On day one, they lost it. On day one, they bowled short, they bowled wide, they bowled leg side. There was no way that the Titans should have got as many as they did on that first innings. It was a really, really poor bowling performance from the Dolphins. Yes, they came back towards the end of the innings, but it was too late. It was too difficult. Dolphins are strong, but as you say, they've got a problem. So Bartman's injury, but they've also got a problem, and they do realise it in a weak keeper. Now Keegan is fine, but he's not a front-line keeper. So there are going to be times when he is going to make the odd mistake and maybe drop a catch. So
you kind of feel like this team. You kind of feel like this team is missing Grant Rudolphson, who could.
They're missing Grant Rudolphson, who's injured, and the guy they had for the T20s, Ruben Herman, has been loaned back. He's been gone back to Pumalanga. So they've essentially got a part-time wicketkeeper and they're a fast bowler down. So that is a huge concern for them going forward.
But the great things for them is Bryce Parsons' opening looked very good. Sadal Advia's 163 was what I expected from him, because you're close to being a Protea, and Sadal, you came on here and you said you wanted to get runs, and you did. So maybe if you want to get runs, come on, because Sean van Berg scored 47. So if you want to come onto our podcast, you could bring you blessings. But that was a really great innings from Sadal. That opening partnership with Bryce Parsons was just really, really good. The Titans bowling attack, I'm sorry, but even like a lot more toothless than the Dolphins. They went batting heavy. I don't know why for this week, rather than try and keeping your guys. Like a guy like Chris Morris would have helped in the side, batting at around about 6 instead of having like 7 batsmen and 4 bowlers. But where did you see the Titans?
The Titans, I was very impressed with Herman, Ruben's brother. I thought it was exceptional. I think he made a mistake in his 112. Lovely, lovely player, good on the eye. So he's good to watch. He doesn't accumulate balls even in this format. Even with the Titans, with the striking at the batting, he was scoring at a good rate throughout the innings. So he was putting pressure on the Dolphins throughout the innings, time and time again. Dupavillon would put 3 or 4 overs together again, but then Mangru would come on for a couple of leg side, boom, both for 4, changed the complexion of the game. It was very, very, very impressive.
The one person I'm also worried about is Tando Ntini, but I'm assuming it's a lack of game time that because he didn't look himself this week.
There's something about him. Now, I have spoken to people who knew Makaya at this sort of age, and they're right. Tando is far more advanced than Makaya was at this age. He is. He's far more advanced. He knows his game a lot better, and there are lots of reasons for that. But there's something not quite right. Something is missing. I don't know what it is. He's got nice action, smooth action, goes through it nicely, but something is not quite right. I don't know if maybe Alan Donald could tell me that his wrist is wrong, or but it's something not quite clicking. He's not consistent enough. He's bowling to, especially to the right hand. He's bowling to middle and leg side, so he's drifting to the leg far too often. So it's bowling at least a 4-ball and over every over.
Yes. Yeah, that's happening. What I picked up as well.
And it's happening on again and again and again. He will change
even
ends,
to the lower order. Corbin Bosch was enjoying him a lot.
Exactly. He would change ends, same thing. Made no difference. It made no difference with the change of the ends. And it's just something not quite clean. It's almost like he's a club cricketer playing in professional cricket. It's that kind of feeling. Kind of feeling. But I'm sure.
Look, I trust German Khan to get it right. I think in the season he'll probably come through. Let's look at the standout players after week 2, just to give guys an indication of who's standing up. So if you're talking Proteas, you can throw people's names in. The Lions have 3 bowlers in the top wicket takers, and Malusi Sabota's got 8 wickets. So he's there. But Mbulelo Butaz is a really great addition to this. I always thought he was a really great bowler. Marco Jansen. Everyone's asking for Marco Jansen. This is it. I think I'm gonna change this top wicket takers column to Proteas 4th seamer, and whoever finishes at the top by India should be the 4th seamer going into the Proteas setup. And then on the run side, Pite is running away with it. Peter Malan is there. His brother's there. Jordan Herman after two games, and then you obviously got Kaya Zondo, who only batted once and in that. Well, he's batted twice, but his average is 2-on-1 because he was not out in the 200 and he was out for 11 in this game. And Frisco Adams, who is a number 8, and I'm loving seeing a number 8 there, Tim. What do you make of this list?
Frisco Adams is the odd one out there.
So you're telling me that he's going to drop down by the next
guy? Yes. Look. I like Frisco. Lovely guy. But here's that guy who struggled to get a franchise contract on a consistent basis before we went to this new structure. Maybe Adrian Burrell has spotted something and has zoned in on it, because those numbers are exceptional. If he can maintain that,
150. It's 150.
If he can finish with an average of 40. As I say, an average of 40 at the end of the season, my word, that would be magnificent.
As a number 7.
That would be magnificent.
Now let's look at some of the Division 2 players. We've got the top run scorers, Tim, your friends, Luke Schlemmer. I'm loving Malcolm Nochal. You've got Nofal. You've got Anile Mokhakane there. Thomas Hobson, who scored a century this weekend to try and save the Limpopo Impalas in at Benoni. And then obviously the wicket takers, Keith Dudgeon used to play franchise cricket, Michael Erlang. But the one that got to me was Aubrey Swanepoel, that 6'4", the 6'4", what is it, 42 to help the Heat win. He's managing to get himself in there after only playing 1 game.
Well, he's a seasoned campaigner. Audrey knows exactly what to do in those sort of situations. He's been around a long time in the game, so that doesn't surprise me. It's good to see. Good to see one of those guys that have been on a long time, but not necessarily a fixture. But he has now found a spot, found a team, and I think he's leading the Heat extremely well so far, which is good to see.
Okay, so let's close this out with something that's really controversial. I'm going to try to do this very quickly. The teams of the week. Tim's team of the week has Sarel Avia, Bryce Parsons, Tony DeZorzi, Zubair Hamza, Piet van Biljon, Jordan Herman, Nicky van den Berg, Michael Mpongwana, Marco Jansen, Luto Supamna, and Sisada Magala. Looks great, but he's left out the guy who actually scored the most runs this weekend, and that is Patrick Kruger. Tim, why did you have Patrick Kruger, or was it just like an oversight to you? Or you just love Bryce Parsons too much?
Well, I actually think it's all of those things. I'm a big fan of Bryce. My eyes were peeled on the Bryce Irwin Sarel partnership at the top of the order. It was exceptional. By the time I had my eyes on Patrick, he was already on about 120, and he was smashing the ball all over the field. Don't get me wrong. I probably apologize to him, but it was against Northwest without Hawken, and it just looked like.
I know not all hundreds are the same, but this guy scored 192.
I know that, and all teams are subjective. If I were doing it again, I would probably put him in instead of his teammate Piet.
What?
Yeah.
That's massive.
But
so you love your Western Province guys there, hey? You got a little bit of a bias.
No.
You want to keep the guy who scored 94, but drop the guy who scored 126.
As you say, different situations happen at different times. Schools happen at different times. You watch. When we do more teams, will not be having a Proteas Cobra's province loving. The only loving I'll have maybe is Jason Smith. I have Jason Smith and he went 59. It was probably the best 50 of the week, in my opinion. That's probably the best 50.
Okay, but Tim, I'm just pulling your leg, my friend. Well,
I know.
Team. So my team was Avia DeZorzi, who scored an incredible 100, Zubair Hamza, Piet van Biljon, Jordan Herman, Patrick Kruger, because 192 means a lot, Mpongwana, Sean von Berg, Marco Jansen, Luto Supamla, and Sisanda Magala. I have no wicketkeeper, but who cares? Because it is the team of the week. So we need to kind of figure out.
That was my difficulty. I will say. I found it very, very difficult.
Oh, no. My wicketkeeper in that team is Sarel Avia. SJ can keep. It's fine. But I brought in Sean von Berg because he got 5 out of 100, 5 wickets for 113. I thought he really did quite well, and I want to, kind of always pick a spinner, and Sean did quite well. But the next set of fixtures, Tim, are when the Proteas will be back. I don't know if they'll be well rested. It's 9 days away. So I don't know what the Lions are going to do because Dwayne's going to be available. Vion's going to be available. Bjorn Fortuyn's going to be available. That's going to be quite interesting to see. But I think they might give them a little bit of extended rest because you got the Netherlands coming up. But we've got a game this weekend. It's in East London. It's the Division 2 game. The Linyati play the Rhinos. And then after that, next week, Thursday the 18th, you've got a jam-packed 4-day series fixtures with a humdinger. In Johannesburg, you've got the Lions against the Rocks, and you've also got one incredible game, the Dolphins against the Knights. That is a Dolphins team that needs a win because they've drawn 2, but a Knights team that are flying high because they've won 2 games in a row, similar to the Lions, and so really, really important game. The Province also in similar situations with Titans. Titans actually lost the game, but Province haven't won a game, and this is the time because you only play 7 games. Game 3, you need to start picking up wins for you to be in that final. The Lions and the Knights have put themselves up very strong. Everybody else needs to kind of catch up to them. Tim, we're probably going to talk about it next week and give a bit of a preview, but this Eastern Cape and Mpumalanga game, that's going to be quite interesting to see how good Border is again because they played a really great game 2 weeks ago. Against Limpopo.
I think that the one pleasing thing, and it is early doors, but the one pleasing thing as Pupulanka and Limpopo in particular have given a really good account of themselves in this format. So yes, that's a really good see. I know that when I spoke to the Pupulanka coach, he wasn't worried about competing in the white ball stuff. He was worried about competing at this level.
Yeah, and look, they did quite well. That draw was
They competed. Point is, they competed. Yes, they had rain, they had help, but they did compete. So, talking about rain, that's the one thing.
Speaking about that game, Southwestern Districts came within 40 runs of getting that to their total. I don't understand why they couldn't continue, but either way, it is cricket. We have to stop when the clock strikes, whatever time it strikes. So that was the intriguing part about that game, is that had it gone on for a couple more, or for an extra hour, Southwestern Districts would have won. So they're probably a little bit angry about that.
Just a final thing. The one thing, we mentioned rain there, the one thing Dolphins do not want is rain. They've had 2 games, both of them affected by rain quite considerably. Week 1, they had the game won. It was done. It was sealed. They were going to thump the Cobras. The rain comes down. Week 2, it still would have probably been a draw, but the rain followed. Both games they were playing away, and the rain followed them. We know what the rain's like in Durban, so.
Okay, and it's November. It's going to be raining a lot. But anyway, thank you very much, Tim. A little bit of longer podcast. We do apologize for that, but the content was there, and we needed to get through it all. We'll be with the Proteas now out of the World Cup. We won't be talking about them and airing our frustration. So yeah, please do keep on supporting us. Please do like and subscribe and follow the channel. Let's get to 1,000. We've got rugby this weekend. If you want to listen to alternative commentary, digital commentary, you can watch on your TV screen and time it to us, and then we can bring you incredible rugby commentary. Outside of that, tell your friends, tell everybody, share this podcast as widely as possible, and enjoy your day. Outside of myself and Tim, it's good night, goodbye, and lesale kakagiso.